Alright guys, today we're talking about factoring special products. So you're going to have to be able to recognize when you have special products in order to factor them. And it'll be really important to check for special products because it will save you a lot of time if you can recognize that you have special products. So the first thing that you have to look for is, do you have two sets of perfect squares? And our perfect squares, again, are 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, 6 squared is 36, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 100, and so on. So we're looking, here we have a 1 and here we have a 25. So we do have two perfect squares, 1 and 25 are both on our list. The second thing we have to look for is, do we have a minus sign in between them? And here we do have a minus sign in between them. So to solve this, all we really have to do is say, well, the square root of 1x squared is x times x, and the square root of 25 is 5. And you'll recall that to get the middle term to drop out, or the x term here, notice that's a 0x. To get the middle term to drop out, that always means we have one plus sign and one minus sign. And the one nice thing is that we can check our work here. X times x is x squared, x times negative 5 is negative 5x, 5 times x is positive 5x, and 5 times negative 5 is minus 25. Those middle terms cancel out because we have a positive and a negative, and so we end up with x squared minus 25, which is what we started with. So our our binomials are x plus 5, x minus 5. Alright, moving on to the next one, we have 64 minus y squared. So 64 is a perfect square, 1 is a perfect square, and they're separated by a minus sign. So 8 and 8 make 64. We know we have 1 plus sign, 1 minus sign because the middle term drops out, and we just have a y there for both sides. 4z squared, perfect square, would be 2z times 2z. We have a minus sign, so 1 plus 1 minus in our answer. And then 1 is also a perfect square. 2z plus 1, 2z minus 1 is our product of binomials. And then for the last one, we have a 1, which is a perfect square, a 36, which is a perfect square, and a minus sign in between. So here we have x times x, and then 6 times 6, 1 plus 1 minus to get the middle term of x's to cancel out. On the second row, we are looking at when we have the same exact thing multiplied by each other. So in this case, we're really just looking at what multiplies to make 16, what adds to make 8. So we can do that by listing our factors of 16. So 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. Which of those add up to 8? Of course, that's 4 times 4. So we get n plus 4, which then we can rewrite as n plus 4 squared. So it's kind of the least amount of writing as possible. So if we look here again, we're looking at multiplying and adding. What multiplies to make 1? Well, 1 times 1. But what adds to make negative 2? That would be negative 1 times negative 1, which equals 1 and adds to make negative 2. So we get m minus 1, m minus 1, which again I can condense down into m minus 1 squared. And the last one, d minus 5, d minus 5. 5 times 5 makes 25. Negative 5 plus negative 5 makes 10. And we can write that as d minus 5 to the second power. Then of course we have some word problems. So a bird picks up a golf ball and drops it while flying. The function 81 minus 6t squared represents the height in feet of the golf ball t seconds after it is dropped. The ball hits the top of a 32-foot tall pine tree. After how many seconds does the ball hit the pine tree? So we have, this is supposed to be 16, not 6. And the ball hits the top of a 32-foot tall pine tree, so it hits at 32. To solve this, we need to subtract 32. We always want these equal to 0. So we get 49 minus 16t squared equals 0. And perfect square, minus sign in between. So that tells me 7 plus 4t, 7 minus 4t equals 0. And so when I find my answer, I'm answering the question after how many seconds, and t represents seconds. So I can solve this 7 plus 4t equals 0, or 7 minus 4t equals 0. So to solve for t, we're going to subtract 7, divide by 4. So in this case, t equals negative 7/4, but you can't have negatives time. So this second one is going to be our answer. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so it's 7/4 seconds. So almost 2 seconds the ball hits the tree. What if the golf ball doesn't hit the tree? After how many seconds does it take to hit the ground? So if it doesn't hit the tree, it's going from 81 minus 16t squared down to 0. And so again, we do have two perfect squares. 9 minus 4t, 9 plus 4t. And these are going to give us the same answers as these two did, except 9/4 instead of 7/4. So 9/4 seconds will be our final answer. Again, the negative 9/4 seconds doesn't apply in this situation. On the back, you have some problems to try. So go ahead and do 1 through 4, and 5 and 6 actually. we'll take a look at 7 and 8 together. So on 7, it is not equal to 0, so we have to make it equal to 0 before we do anything else. 25a squared minus 4 equals 0. So now we have two perfect squares separated by a minus sign, which means 5a minus 2, 5a plus 2 equals 0. And since they equal 0, that really means that we want to solve all the way for what a equals. So for this a to equal 0, we do 5a minus 2 equals 0. Add 2, divide by 5, so a equals 2/5. And on this one, we subtract 2, divide by 5, and we get negative 2/5. And again, that works because we know if we have two things multiplied together that equal 0, one of those has to be 0. Either the first whole set of parentheses or the second one has to equal 0. Like, whatever's in there has to equal 0 to get 0 as an answer. So if we set them individually equal to 0, it'll tell us the two situations. On number 8, again, we have to subtract 26p, so this has to be equal to 0 first. So now we have p squared minus 26p plus 169 equals 0. And if you know your squares through 15, you know that that one's 13. So p minus 13 equals 0. So in this case, p equals positive 13. And on the last one, a pine cone falls from a tree. A pine cone's height, y in feet after t seconds, can be modeled by 64 minus 16t squared. After how many seconds does the pine cone hit the ground? So hitting the ground is a height of 0. So 64 minus 16t squared equals 0. Two perfect squares. So we have 8 plus 4t, 8 minus 4t. And so when we go to solve these, 4 times negative 2 would be negative 8 plus 8. So this would be negative 2. This would be positive 2. So the time would have to be negative 2 seconds or positive 2 seconds. And so therefore the pine cone hits the ground after 2 seconds. Alright, try those 6 problems at the top of this page. We'll go over them tomorrow. Have a great night.